I had been looking forward to my birthday for weeks. My husband Daniel and my mother-in-law Lorraine had promised something special this year, a dinner at one of the city's finest restaurants. After years of quiet celebrations at home or being brushed aside due to more important things, the thought of an elegant evening where I would be the center of attention filled me with childlike anticipation. It felt like, finally, I was going to be appreciated. The week leading up to it was different from any other birthday week I'd experienced since marrying Daniel. Usually my birthday would come and go with barely a mention, maybe a card picked up from the drugstore on the way home from work, or a hurried happy birthday over morning coffee. But this year, Lorraine had actually called me, something she rarely did, to discuss the plans. "We want to do something special for you, Rachel," she'd said, her voice uncharacteristically warm. "You deserve it." Those words echoed in my mind as I spent the afternoon carefully preparing. I chose a dress I hadn't worn in years, deep navy blue with subtle sequins that shimmered in the light. It was the dress I'd worn to Daniel's company Christmas party 3 years ago, the last time he'd really looked at me like I was beautiful. I'd kept it in the back of my closet, wrapped in plastic, waiting for another occasion that never seemed to come. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I took my time with everything. Foundation smoothed over the tired lines that had settled around my eyes. Mascara lengthened lashes that hadn't seen makeup in months. I even dug out the lipstick my sister had given me last Christmas, a bold red I'd never been brave enough to wear. Tonight felt different. Tonight, I could be brave. The kids were at my mother's for the weekend, another surprise arrangement that Lorraine had suggested. "You and Daniel should have a proper night out," she'd said. "Just adults, you know." It had been so long since we'd had that. Between soccer practice, school projects, and Daniel's demanding job at the tech firm downtown, we'd become more like roommates than spouses, passing each other in the hallway with quick pecks and reminders about grocery lists. I slipped on my heels, the ones that made me feel tall and confident, even though they pinched my toes after an hour. Looking at my reflection before leaving, I allowed myself to feel a rare burst of joy. The woman staring back at me looked happy, hopeful even. I grabbed my clutch, the silver one that matched the sequins on my dress, and headed downstairs. Daniel had already left, saying he needed to pick up his mother and would meet me at the restaurant. "Giovanni's at 8, he'd reminded me that morning, barely looking up from his phone. "Don't be late." I'd bitten back the urge to remind him that I was never the one who was late in our relationship. The drive to Giovanni's took me through downtown, past the familiar storefronts and coffee shops where I used to meet friends before life got too busy, before I became just Daniel's wife, or the kid's mom. The evening light cast everything in gold, and I cranked up the radio, singing along to a song from college that made me feel 22 again. Arriving at the restaurant, I took a moment in the parking lot to check my reflection in the car's visor mirror. Everything was still in place. I spritzed on a little perfume, the expensive one I saved for special occasions, and walked toward the entrance with my heart light and hopeful. Giovanni's was exactly as I'd imagined. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, the gentle clink of wine, glasses, and the low hum of conversation. The hostess, a young woman with perfect posture and an even more perfect smile, greeted me warmly. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes. Thornton for 3 at 8 o'clock, I said, glancing at my watch. It was 7:58. For once, everyone would be on time. But that hope began to dim the moment the hostess scanned the reservation list and frowned. She flipped through the pages of her leather-bound book, her manicured finger trailing down the entries. "I'm sorry," she said, looking up with genuine confusion. "There's no reservation under that name." I felt my smile falter but quickly recovered. "Maybe it's under Lorraine Thornton? Or Daniel?" I suggested, trying to keep the anxiety out of my voice. This had to be a simple mix-up. Daniel was meticulous about reservations. The hostess checked, again, shaking her head slowly. No Thornton at all for tonight. Could it possibly be under another name? I stood there, feeling increasingly foolish in my sparkly dress and pinching heels. Other diners were starting to arrive, brushing past me with confident strides toward their assured tables. I fumbled with my phone, checking Daniel's last text. Giovanni's, 8 o'clock. I hadn't misunderstood. Would you like me to check if there are any tables available? The hostess offered kindly, obviously picking up on my distress. Before I could answer, I caught a glimpse of movement in the far corner of the restaurant. Through the archway that led to the main dining room, I spotted a familiar profile. Actually, I said, relief washing over me. I think I see my party. They must already be here. I smiled and looked around the room, searching for that familiar face I'd glimpsed. As I walked deeper into the restaurant, weaving between tables, of couples leaning close over candlelight and families celebrating special occasions, my eyes adjusted to the dimmer lighting. That's when I saw them clearly. Daniel and Lorraine seated at a candlelit table in the far corner, already enjoying drinks and what looked like several appetizers spread between them. Relief flooded through me as I spotted them, followed quickly by confusion. The table was set for 2, not 3. Empty wine glasses caught the candlelight, and between them sat a bottle of Chianti, the expensive kind Daniel only ordered on special occasions. They hadn't noticed me yet, both leaning in toward each other, laughing at something Lorraine had just said. She was wearing the pearl necklace Daniel's father had given her, the one she only wore to the opera or charity galas. My steps slowed as I approached, each one suddenly heavier than the last. Something felt off. The intimacy of their setup, the way they sat so comfortably together without a third-place setting, without any sign they were waiting for someone. The appetizers, bruschetta, calamari, the antipasto platter, were already half-eaten. How long had they been here? As I drew closer, I could hear snippets of their conversation. Lorraine was telling a story about her tennis club, gesturing with her wine glass, while Daniel listened with the kind of attention I hadn't seen from him in months. He was wearing the charcoal suit I'd bought him for his promotion last year, the one that made his shoulders look broader. He'd even styled his hair, something he rarely bothered with anymore. I stood there for a moment, invisible, watching them enjoy each other's company. The waiter approached their table with another bottle of wine, and Daniel nodded approvingly. They were settling in for a long meal, without me. When I finally reached their table, Lorraine noticed me first. Her eyes flickered with something. Surprise? Annoyance? Before her face arranged itself into that sharp smile I knew so well. The one she wore when introducing me to her country club friends as Daniel's wife, the one who used to work in marketing. "Oh, good," she said, setting down her wine glass with a casual flick of her wrist. "You're here." Daniel's head snapped up, and for a split second, I saw panic flash across his face before he quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in the breadbasket. He didn't say hello. He didn't stand up. He didn't even smile. "Hi," I managed, my voice coming out smaller than intended. "I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand? I thought we were meeting at 8. Lorraine's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh no, dear. You understood perfectly." She reached for her Hermes bag hanging on the back of her chair and pulled out a leather folder. "We've had such a lovely evening, haven't we, Daniel?" My husband mumbled something non-committal, still avoiding my eyes. The couple at the next table had stopped their conversation, sensing the tension radiating from our corner. "Here," Lorraine continued, pulling a receipt from the folder and holding it out to me. "Here's the check." Time seemed to slow as I stared at her outstretched hand. The receipt fluttered slightly in the air between us. Around us, the restaurant continued its elegant dance. Waiters gliding between tables, soft jazz playing overhead, candles flickering in their crystal holders. But, In our corner, everything had frozen. The check? I repeated stupidly, my mind refusing to process what was happening. Well, yes, Lorraine said, her tone implying this was the most natural thing in the world. For dinner. Daniel mentioned you'd offered to treat us for your birthday. So thoughtful of you. I looked at Daniel then, searching his face for some sign that this was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a cruel joke that would end with surprise dessert and birthday songs. But he just sat there, shoulders hunched, playing with his napkin. The candlelight that had seemed so romantic from across the room now cast harsh shadows across his face, making him look older, weaker. I started, then stopped. The words stuck in my throat like glass shards. I hadn't offered anything. We'd barely discussed the dinner beyond the time and place. The check remained suspended between us, Lorraine's patience clearly wearing thin. The waiter hovering nearby pretended to adjust place settings at an empty table, but I could feel his eyes on us. The couple next to us had given up all pretense of not watching. My hand moved without conscious thought, reaching out to take the receipt. It felt heavier than paper should, weighted with humiliation and betrayal. As my fingers closed around it, Lorraine's smile widened. "Wonderful," she said, turning back to Daniel as if I'd already left. "Now, where were we?" "Oh yes, the Marseille trip." I stood there for another moment, check in hand, watching them slip back into their conversation as easily as if I'd never existed. Daniel glanced up once, briefly, and in his eyes I saw not guilt or apology, but relief. Relief that I'd taken the check without a scene. Relief that I was playing along. The walk out of the restaurant felt endless. Each table I passed seemed to watch my retreat, or maybe that was just my imagination. The hostess called out a cheery, "Have a good evening," as I passed, and I somehow managed to nod, even smile. My hand clutched the check so tightly it crumpled at the edges. It wasn't until I pushed through the heavy doors into the cool night air that I dared to look at the total. The number swam before my eyes. $347.83. They'd ordered lobster, prime, rib, multiple bottles of wine. Dessert was probably coming, all on my supposed dime. I stood on the sidewalk, my beautiful navy dress suddenly feeling like a costume, my carefully applied makeup a mask. Through the restaurant window, I could see them laughing, toasting with fresh glasses of wine, celebrating. But what? My humiliation? My compliance? The valet approached, keys jingling. "Would you like your car, ma'am?" I looked at him. Young, earnest, probably working his way through college, and managed to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. "Yes, please." As I waited for my car, I carefully folded the receipt and placed it in my clutch, next to the lipstick I'd been so proud to wear. The night air was turning cold, and I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling every bit of the fool in my sparkly dress and painful heels. This wasn't about money. Daniel made enough as a software architect, and Lorraine's late husband had left her very comfortable. This was about power, about putting me in my place, about showing me exactly where I stood in their perfectly arranged world. My car arrived, and I slipped the valet a $5. Money I apparently had for strangers, but not for my own birthday dinner. As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse of them through the window. Daniel was signing something, probably the credit card slip for another bottle of wine. Lorraine was checking her phone, looking pleased with herself. I held my head high until I turned the corner, until I was sure they couldn't see me anymore. Only then did I allow my shoulders to slump, my carefully constructed composure to crack. But I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later, in the privacy of my car, in the darkness of the parking lot where I'd eventually pull over because the tears made it too hard to see the road. The parking lot of the old Safeway, closed down 2 years ago but still lit by a few functioning streetlights, became my sanctuary. I'd pulled in without thinking, Muscle memory from years of grocery runs with the kids guiding me to this familiar space. Now it sat empty except for my car and the occasional teenager using it as a skateboard park. Inside my car, I sat with the bill still in my hand, though by now I'd memorized every line item. The Chateau Margaux at $95. The Lobster Thermidor at $68. The Prime Rib Special at $54. Even a cheese plate that cost more than I spent on groceries for a week. Each charge felt like a calculated slap, designed for maximum impact. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from my sister. "How's the birthday dinner? Send pics." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. What could I possibly say? That my husband and mother-in-law had orchestrated an elaborate humiliation? That I'd been reduced to nothing more than a walking credit card? The cursor blinked accusingly. Instead of responding, I opened my banking app. The joint checking account balance stared back at me. Healthy, comfortable, built from years of careful budgeting and my financial contributions before I'd stopped working to raise the kids. Money I'd saved from my marketing director salary, bonuses I'd earned working 60-hour weeks while Daniel was still finishing his master's degree. Another memory surfaced. 3 months ago, when I'd suggested we take a family vacation to Yellowstone. "Too expensive," Daniel had said, barely looking up from his laptop. "Maybe next year." Yet here was nearly $400 spent on one meal that I hadn't even been invited to share. My phone rang. Daniel's photo, taken on our honeymoon in Hawaii, both of us tanned and laughing, filled the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Lorraine called. Then Daniel again. I turned the phone face down and stared out at the empty parking lot. This wasn't the first time, I realized. The pattern had been there all along. I'd just been too desperate to maintain peace to see it. Last Christmas, when Lorraine had given everyone expensive gifts except me, claiming she'd forgotten to order mine in time, the anniversary dinner where Daniel had invited his mother along without telling me, turning what should have been a romantic evening into another command performance where I played the role of the silent, smiling wife. I thought about the account Daniel didn't know about. The one I'd opened years ago, initially just to have somewhere to put birthday money from my parents, small freelance checks from the occasional marketing consulting I still did. Over time, it had grown. Not massive, but substantial. Enough. My laptop was in the trunk, packed with the kids' sports equipment and school supplies. I retrieved it, powering it on in the driver's seat. The screen's glow filled the car's interior, harsh against the darkness outside. My fingers moved with purpose now, logging into the account Daniel had never asked about because he assumed he knew all our finances. $18,000 and change. Not a fortune, but enough for what I was about to do. I made the first call to my lawyer friend, Jennifer. We'd lost touch over the years. Daniel had always found her too aggressive, which I now realized meant too likely to point out his behavior. She answered on the third ring. "Rachel, is everything okay? It's kind of late." "Jen," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I need to ask you about separation procedures and protecting assets." The pause on the other end was brief. "Are you safe?" "Yes, just done." "I'll text you my office address. Can you come by tomorrow morning?" After hanging up, I opened the joint account management page. Daniel had made me a co-signer years ago, mainly so I could handle household expenses. He'd never imagined I'd need to know about the automatic transfers, the investment accounts, the vacation fund we'd been building for 5 years. With a few clicks, I initiated transfers to my solo account. Not theft. Every penny was from my contributions, traceable through direct deposits from my old job, inheritance from my grandmother, tax refunds from years of meticulous filing. The parking lot remained empty while I worked, occasionally lit by passing cars on the main road. My phone continued its silent light show of missed calls and texts. I didn't need to read them to know their content. Daniel's would start concerned, then angry, then pleading. Lorraine's would be all righteous indignation. I pulled up our mortgage documents next. The house was in both our names, but I'd made the down payment with money from selling my condo, the one I'd bought single and loved, the one Daniel had convinced me to give up because suburban life would be better for kids. More documentation to forward to Jennifer. By the time I finished, nearly an hour had passed. The battery on my laptop was dying, but I'd done enough. Legal notices drafted, accounts secured, appointments scheduled. The birthday girl had finally given herself a gift. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked different somehow. The makeup had smudged slightly, the carefully styled hair now loose around my shoulders. But my eyes, they looked clearer than they had in years. No more pretending. No more accepting crumbs and calling them a feast. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through downtown, past the marketing firm where I'd once been a rising star, past the coffee shop where Daniel and I had our first date, back when he'd hung on my every word, back when he'd been proud of my ambition instead of threatened by it, past the park where I'd told him I was pregnant with our first child, where he'd spun me around with joy and promises of partnership. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Good. They were probably still at the restaurant, perhaps ordering cognac, toasting their successful manipulation. I had time. Inside, I moved with efficient purpose. A suitcase from the hall, closet. Essentials only. Clothes, toiletries, documents. The photo albums I left, except for one picture. Me with the kids at the beach last summer, all of us laughing at something off camera. Real joy, not the performed kind I'd been doing for years. In the kitchen, I pulled out a legal pad and began to write. Not an explanation or justification, just facts. I've initiated separation proceedings. My lawyer will be in contact. I'll arrange to see the kids through proper channels. I paused, pen hovering over the paper. So many words wanted to pour out. Years of swallowed protests, dismissed feelings, minimized dreams. Instead, I simply added, "The dinner bill is on the counter. Consider it paid in full." I placed the crumpled Giovanni's receipt next to the note, smoothing it out one final time. $347,083, the price of clarity, the cost of freedom, the best money I'd never actually spent. As I wheeled my suitcase toward the door, my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Where are you?" Daniel's voice was thin, stretched with panic. "The credit cards aren't working. The restaurant manager is..." "Check the account," I said quietly. Silence. Then, "What did you do?" "I paid the bill, Daniel, with interest. Every cent I put into our life together is now back where it belongs." Lorraine's voice screeched in the background, but I was already hanging up. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I powered it off. Tomorrow there would be conversations, accusations, negotiations. Tonight I was done talking. I loaded my suitcase into the car, taking one last look at the house. The porch light was on. I'd installed that myself last spring when Daniel was too busy to call an electrician. The garden was starting to bloom. Flowers I'd planted and tended while Lorraine criticized my choices. The welcome mat still said, "Home sweet home," but it hadn't been sweet in a long time. Driving away, I didn't feel the tears I'd expected. Instead, something else bubbled up. From deep inside, a laugh, quiet at first, then louder, until I had to pull over because I was laughing so hard. All these years, I'd been so afraid of their disapproval, of losing a family that had never really accepted me. I'd paid such a high price for the privilege of being dismissed. But tonight, on my 41st birthday, I'd finally paid my last bill. And the receipt was beautiful. The Hampton Inn off Route 84 wasn't fancy, but it was clean, and more importantly, it was mine for the night. I'd paid cash, using the emergency fund I kept in my car. Old habits from my single days that Daniel used to mock as paranoid. "We're married now," he'd say. "You don't need escape money." Funny how right I'd been to keep it. I'd barely settled onto the surprisingly comfortable bed when my phone started again. I'd turned it back on to check messages from the kids, making sure they were okay at my mother's. Instead, I found 37 missed calls, 42 texts, and 12 voicemails. The digital panic of people who'd just realized their comfortable arrangement had come crashing down. For a moment, I considered turning it off again. But something made me answer when Daniel's number flashed across the screen. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the satisfaction of knowing. For once, I held all the cards. "What did you do?" His voice cracked on the last word, high and strained in a way I'd never heard before. Gone was the confident tech executive who commanded meeting rooms and dismissed my opinions with casual authority. "I told you already. I paid the bill." I kept my voice level, channeling the calm professionalism I'd once used in board meetings. I transferred the money, my money. "Your money?" The indignation was almost comical. "Rachel, we're married. There's no your money or my money. You can't just..." "Actually, I can." I pulled up the bank app on my laptop, watching the completed transfers with satisfaction. Every withdrawal traces back to my deposits, my grandmother's inheritance, my marketing bonuses, the severance package when I left to raise our children, all documented. The silence stretched so long I wondered if he'd hung up. Then I heard it. Lorraine's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. "Give me that phone, Daniel. Let me talk to her." "Mom, please. Don't, Mom, please me. This is theft. I'll call the police. The phone rustled, and suddenly, Lorraine's voice filled my ear. "How dare you embarrass us like this? The manager had to cover our bill personally. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I almost laughed at the irony. Humiliating? Really? We'll be the talk of the country club. The Thorntons, unable to pay their bill at Giovanni's. This reflects on all of us, you stupid girl. I'm 41, Lorraine. I haven't been a girl in decades. I stood up, pacing the small hotel room. And you're right, this does reflect on all of us. It shows exactly who we are. You vindictive little. The joint savings, the vacation, fund, the emergency backup. I cut her off smoothly. All being reallocated. Not stolen, not hidden. Just redistributed back to where it came from. Check the transaction history if you don't believe me. More rustling. Daniel's voice farther away. "Mom, give me the phone. I'm handling this." "You've handled enough." His shout surprised me. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never heard Daniel raise his voice to his mother. "This is between Rachel and me." When he came back on the line, his breath was shaky. "The house payment is due next week. The kids' tuition. How am I supposed to..." "There's still money in the account," I said. "Your salary deposits. More than enough for bills. You'll just have to budget. Maybe skip the $300 dinners. This isn't about the dinner." "No," I agreed. "It's not. It's about 15 years of being treated like hired help instead of a partner. It's about birthday celebrations that didn't include the birthday girl. It's about choosing your mother over your wife every single time. That's not... I never..." He was floundering now. The script flipped. "Where are you? Let's talk about this. Face to face." We had our chance for face to face. You chose to face your lobster instead. "Rachel, please. The kids will be fine. I'll call them in the morning, explain I'm taking a little trip. My lawyer will arrange a proper custody discussion." "Lawyer?" The panic ratcheted up another notch. "You've already seen a lawyer?" "Appointments tomorrow at 9. I glanced at the hotel clock. 5 hours until I needed to be up. Jennifer Martinez. You remember her? The one you said was too aggressive? Turns out that's exactly what I need. Another silence. Then, quietly, "I never meant for tonight to go like that." "How did you mean for it to go, Daniel? What was the plan? Humiliate me into submission? Make me so grateful for any attention that I'd keep accepting whatever crumbs you and Lorraine threw my way? It wasn't supposed to. Mom said you'd offered to pay. She said you'd called her about it. I sat back down on the bed, exhaustion suddenly hitting me. And you believed her? After 15 years, you just took her word over mine without even asking. She's my mother. And I'm your wife. Am. I rubbed my temple, feeling the beginning of a headache. It doesn't matter anymore. Don't say that. We can fix this. Counseling. Whatever you need. What I needed was a husband who'd sit next to me at dinner on my birthday. What I needed was a partner who'd defend me when his mother crossed lines. What I needed was to matter as much as your comfort. Lorraine's voice rose in the background again. Tell her she needs to return that money immediately, or I'm calling my lawyer. You do that, I said, loud enough for her to hear. Tell him how you committed fraud by claiming I offered to pay for a dinner I wasn't invited to. See how that plays out. The phone went silent except for muffled arguing. I could picture them. In the restaurant parking lot, Lorraine in her pearls and perfect makeup, Daniel in his expensive suit, both of them reeling from the sudden shift in power dynamics. When Daniel came back, his voice was different, defeated. The restaurant did comp the meal. The manager knows us. New dad. Lucky you. I pulled back the hotel curtains, looking out at the highway. Cars rushed past, everyone heading somewhere that mattered to them. Consider it your birthday gift to me. A free dinner I didn't have to not eat. This is really it? You're really leaving? I left a long time ago, Daniel. Tonight I just finally admitted it. What do I tell the kids? The truth. That Mommy needed some time to think. That sometimes adults make mistakes and need space to figure things out. They're smart kids. They've probably noticed more than we think. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Emma asked me last week why we never hold hands anymore. My chest tightened. Emma, our 12-year-old, too observant for her own good. What did you tell her? That we were tired, busy. Well, now you can tell her that I'm taking care of being tired, and after tomorrow, I won't be too busy for her anymore. Rachel. Goodbye, Daniel. I ended the call before he could say more, then turned off the phone completely. There'd be more calls, more texts, more voicemails, but not tonight. I lay back on the hotel bed, still in my birthday dress, staring at the popcorn ceiling. Somewhere, out there, Daniel and Lorraine were probably driving home in separate cars, each spinning their own version of events. By tomorrow, Lorraine would have crafted a story for her country club friends, where she was the victim of her ungrateful daughter-in-law's vindictiveness. Let her. I had my own story now, and for the first time in years, I was the one writing it. The highway hummed outside my window, a lullaby of other people's journeys. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and logistics, custody arrangements and asset divisions. But tonight, in this anonymous room off Route 84, I finally felt like myself again. Happy birthday to me, indeed. The law offices of Martinez and Associates occupied the third floor of a converted Victorian near downtown. I arrived early, sitting in my car for 10 minutes, watching the morning commuters hurry past with their coffee cups and purpose. I'd changed out of my birthday dress into jeans and a blazer, armor for a different kind of battle. Jennifer answered. Her own door, which shouldn't have surprised me but did. The corporate lawyer I remembered had become something more approachable, though the keen intelligence in her eyes remained sharp as ever. Rachel? She pulled me into a hug before I could offer a handshake. God, it's good to see you. Come in. Come in. Her office smelled like fresh coffee and leather-bound books. Diplomas from Stanford lined one wall, but the desk held photos of kids and dogs, evidence of a life beyond billable hours. So, she said, settling behind her desk with practiced ease. Start from the beginning. I told her everything, not just last night, but the years leading up to it. The slow erosion of my identity, The way Daniel's need for his mother's approval always trumped our marriage. The birthday dinners I'd hosted for everyone but never received. The promotions I'd passed up. The friendships I'd let fade. The dreams I'd shelved in the name of family harmony. Jennifer took notes in quick, efficient strokes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with something between admiration and anger. "First things first," she said. "What you did with the money was brilliant. Completely legal, thoroughly documented. They don't have a leg to stand on there." Relief washed over me. In the harsh light of morning, I'd started second-guessing myself. "Now," she continued, pulling out a fresh legal pad. "Let's talk about what you want. Not what's fair, not what's standard. What do you actually want?" I'd spent the sleepless hotel night thinking about exactly that. I want shared custody of the kids. I want the house. I made the down payment. I've maintained it, and the kids need stability. I want my career back, or at least the chance to rebuild it. And I want out, Jen. Clean and final. She nodded, making more notes. The house should be straightforward given the down payment documentation. Custody won't be an issue unless Daniel fights it, which, based on what you've told me, seems unlikely. He travels for work, relies on you for all the day-to-day parenting. His mother might push him to fight. Let her. Jennifer's smile had an edge. I've been waiting years to depose Lorraine Thornton. Did you know she tried to get me blackballed from the country club after I refused to handle her friend's sketchy real estate deal? I didn't know that. Oh, there's a lot you don't know about your mother-in-law, but that's ammunition for later if we need it. She turned back to her notes. What about alimony? I shook my head. I don't want his money. I have my savings, and I'll have my career. I just want what's mine. Noble of you, but don't be too noble. You gave up your career trajectory for this marriage. That has value. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out strategy. Jennifer had a paralegal draw up initial papers while we talked, the efficient machinery of divorce law clicking into motion. By 11, I had a filing number and a court date. One more thing, Jennifer said as I prepared to leave. Where are you staying? Hotel for now. I need to find something more permanent. My sister runs a property management company. She's got a furnished 2-bedroom in Riverside, month-to-month lease. It's in the same school district. I felt tears threaten for the first time all morning. Jen, none of that. She handed me a business card. Call her. Tell her I sent you. And Rachel, welcome back. The afternoon dissolved into logistics. I met with Jennifer's sister, signed a lease, and had keys to a new life by 3 o'clock. The apartment was small but sunny, with a view of the park where I used to take the kids when they were toddlers. Full circle but moving forward. My phone, turned back on, showed 63 missed calls. I ignored them all except one from my mother. Sweetheart, she said when I called back. The kids are fine. We're making cookies. But Daniel's been calling nonstop. I know. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle. Don't be sorry. I never liked how he treated you. Or how he let that woman treat you. My mother had never been Lorraine's biggest fan. What do you need? Can you keep the kids one more night? I want to get settled before I talk to them. Of course. Rachel? Yeah, Mom? I'm proud of you. I sat in my new apartment, on furniture that wasn't mine, looking out at a view I'd never planned for, and let those words sink in. Proud. When had I last felt proud of myself? My laptop chimed with an email from Jennifer. The papers had been filed. Official notice would be served tomorrow. The wheels I'd set in motion couldn't be stopped now. Another email popped up, this one from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made me freeze. Heard through the grapevine. LinkedIn says you're available? I opened it cautiously. Marcus Chen, my old colleague from Richardson Marketing, now VP at a boutique firm downtown. Rachel, Jennifer Martinez mentioned, you might be returning to the workforce. We have an opening for a creative director. Same building as Jen's office, actually. Coffee Monday to discuss. No pressure, just options. Options. After years of having none, the word felt foreign. I typed back a quick acceptance, then sat staring at the screen. This morning I'd been a discarded wife. This afternoon I was a potential creative director. The apartment's intercom buzzed. Delivery. I hadn't ordered anything. The doorman handed me a bouquet. Not roses, but wildflowers. The kind I used to buy myself at the farmer's market before Daniel declared them too messy. The card was in my sister's handwriting. Happy birthday, one day late. Here's to new beginnings and old dreams. Love, Sarah. I put the flowers in a borrowed vase and set them on the kitchen counter. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, lighting up the yellows and purples and oranges. Life, messy and beautiful, and finally mine again. My phone rang. Daniel. This time I almost answered. Almost. But the apartment was too peaceful. The flowers too perfect. The possibilities too fresh to let his voice intrude. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. Updated my resume. Marketing Director, 2009-2012. Achievements, accolades, a professional, life I'd walked away from but never truly left behind. By evening, I'd also done something else I'd been putting off. I called my kids. Mommy? Emma's voice was cautious. Are you okay? Dad said you were sick. I'm not sick, sweetheart. Just needed some time to think. How are Grandma's cookies? Good. She let us use the mixer. A pause. Are you and Daddy fighting? Kids know. They always know. We're working through some grown-up stuff. But it has nothing to do with you or your brother, okay? We both love you exactly the same. Are you coming home? I've got a new place for now. You'll see it soon. It's near the park with the good swings. The one with the tire swing? That's the one. We talked for a few more minutes about school, her soccer game, the book report due Monday. Normal things that felt precious in their ordinariness. When we hung up, I realized I'd been crying, but they weren't sad tears. Night settled over Riverside, and I discovered the apartment's best feature: silence. No tense dinners where every word might trigger criticism. No walking on eggshells, waiting for Lorraine's next visit, Daniel's next dismissal. Just peace. I made tea in my new kitchen, using the single mug I'd bought at Target on the way home. Tomorrow there would be lawyers and meetings and difficult conversations. But tonight, I sat at my small table, laptop open to job listings and possibilities, and felt the shape of my new life forming around me. Breaking the cycle hadn't been the plan. The plan had been to endure, to hope things might change, to wait for Daniel to choose me over his mother just once. But sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in unexpected packages, like birthday dinners you're not invited to, like humiliations that set you free, like cycles that needed breaking more than they needed mending. I raised my tea mug in a solitary toast. To endings that were really beginnings, to strength I'd forgotten I had, to futures that started with walking away. The city lights glittered beyond my window, each one a story, a life, a choice being made. Tomorrow I'd join them again, not as Daniel's wife or Lorraine's disappointment, but as myself. Rachel. Just Rachel. It was enough. It was everything. 3 weeks later, the bruise of that birthday had faded into something more like a battle. Scar, visible if you knew where to look, but no longer tender to the touch. The apartment had become home, filled with secondhand furniture that I'd chosen myself and fresh flowers that nobody complained about. The kids had taken to the place immediately, especially the proximity to the park, and even Daniel had admitted, during pickup, that it suited me. What he meant was it was smaller than our suburban palace, less impressive to his standards. What I heard was that it was mine. The divorce papers had been served. Lorraine had thrown her expected fit. And life had somehow continued spinning. I'd started the new job at Chen & Associates, diving into creative campaigns with an enthusiasm I'd forgotten I possessed. My colleagues didn't know me as Daniel's wife, or that woman who'd given up her career for family. I was just Rachel, the new creative director with fresh ideas and 15 years of pent-up innovation, which is how I found myself on a Thursday evening, sitting in O'Malley's pub with my team after landing a major client. Not a fancy restaurant with white tablecloths and judgment, just a comfortable Irish bar where the laughter was genuine and the company was chosen. To Rachel, Marcus raised his beer, for nailing the Riverside Health presentation and reminding us why we got into this business. To second chances, I countered, clinking glasses with the group. Sarah from design, Tom from accounts, Lisa from strategy. People who saw me for my work, not my relationships. Is it true this is your first job in 15 years? Lisa asked, her admiration evident. That's brave. Starting over. Not starting over, I corrected, surprising myself with the confidence in my voice. Picking up where I left off. My phone buzzed. Emma texting from Daniel's. Dad ordered pizza again, Monsieur Lasagna. I smiled, typing back. I'll make it this weekend. Extra cheese. Everything okay? Sarah asked, noticing my expression. Just my daughter. She's at her dad's tonight. Divorce? She asked gently. In progress. Best decision I ever made. The words came easily now, without the sharp edges they'd carried weeks ago. Tom flagged the server. Another round. We're celebrating. What are we celebrating now? I laughed. Thursday, he grinned. And new beginnings. And the fact that Marcus finally hired someone who can match his crazy ideas. The evening unfolded, with the easy rhythm of newfound friendship. No one mentioned my clothes or my contribution to household finances. No one expected me to be quiet when the men talked business. When I suggested a bold strategy for the next campaign, they listened, debated, refined, treating my ideas with the respect they deserved. Around 9, my phone rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. Sorry, I need to take this, I said, stepping outside into the crisp evening air. Rachel, I have good news. Jennifer's voice was triumphant. Daniel's agreed to all terms. The house is yours, shared custody as discussed, and he's not contesting the asset division. I leaned against the brick wall, feeling something loosen in my chest. Really? Lorraine tried to convince him to fight, but apparently he told her to back off. My source at the country club says she's been telling everyone he was bewitched by a gold digger, but nobody's buying it, especially after the Giovanni's incident became public knowledge. How did that get out? Servers talk, especially when someone as notoriously difficult as Lorraine Thornton gets her comeuppance. Jennifer's satisfaction was audible. The paperwork should be final in 60 days. 60 days. 2 months until I was officially, legally free. Thank you, Jen. For everything. Thank me by living well. It's the best revenge. I hung up and stood there for a moment, breathing in the city air. Through the pub window, I could see my colleagues laughing, Sarah showing Tom something on her phone, Marcus gesturing wildly about some idea. My people. My choice. Inside, they'd ordered appetizers, loaded potato skins, wings, mozzarella sticks. Bar food that would have horrified Lorraine but tasted like freedom to me. Good news? Marcus asked as I slid back into the booth. The best. My house is officially mine. That calls for champagne, Lisa signaled the server. At O'Malley's? Tom laughed. Best they've got is Prosecco. Perfect, I said. I've had enough of pretentious wine to last a lifetime. The Prosecco arrived in mismatched flutes, bubbles rising like tiny celebrations. We toasted again, to houses, to futures, to Thursday nights that felt like New Year's Eve. "You know," Sarah said thoughtfully, "my birthday's next month. Want to make this a regular thing? Monthly birthday drinks for the team?" "As long as nobody expects me to pay for dinners I'm not invited to," I said, then laughed at their confused expressions. Long story, but yes, I'm in. The evening wound down naturally, people drifting off to families and responsibilities. Marcus walked me to my car, the suburban dad in him making sure I was safe. "You know," he said, "when Jennifer called about you, I almost didn't believe our luck. The Rachel Morrison I remembered was already brilliant 15 years ago." "That was Rachel Thornton for the last decade and a half," I corrected. "No," he said firmly. "That was always Rachel Morrison. She just got buried for a while." Driving home through familiar streets that led to an unfamiliar address, I thought about birthdays, about celebrations and who deserved them, about dinners at fancy restaurants versus laughter at Irish pubs. My apartment building came into view, windows glowing warm against the night. The doorman nodded as I passed, no longer calling me Mrs. Thornton but simply Rachel. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. Hair slightly mussed from the evening breeze, cheeks flushed from Prosecco and laughter, eyes bright with something that looked suspiciously like happiness. Inside, I kicked off my heels and padded to the kitchen. On the counter sat a cake box I'd forgotten about, a small purchase from the bakery near work. Nothing fancy, just chocolate with vanilla frosting, the kind I'd loved as a kid before Lorraine informed me that proper ladies preferred fruit tarts. I cut myself a generous slice and settled on my second-hand couch, laptop open to the campaign notes we'd discussed at the pub. The apartment was quiet, except for the distant hum of city life, the occasional siren, the muffled television from next door. Not lonely, peaceful. My phone buzzed with texts from the evening. "Great ideas tonight. Can't wait to implement them Monday. Sarah. Thanks for making work fun again. Tom. Welcome to the team. Officially. Lisa. I took a bite. Of cake. Rich and simple and exactly what I wanted. No candles this time. The wish had already come true. Not the wish for a perfect family, or a husband who'd choose me, or a mother-in-law who'd accept me. Those wishes had dissolved like sugar in rain. The new wish was simpler. To be myself. To be enough. To celebrate the small victories and ordinary Thursday nights that added up to a life. Looking around my small kingdom, the flowers on the counter, the kids' artwork on the fridge, the drafts of tomorrow's presentation scattered on the coffee table, I realized I'd finally gotten my birthday dinner. Not at Giovanni's with its white tablecloths and calculated cruelties, but here, in the life I'd built from the ashes of humiliation. I raised my wine glass one more time, to the empty room that felt fuller than any restaurant. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered, and meant it. Outside, the city sparkled with its million stories, its endless possibilities. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably heating up pizza for the kids. Somewhere else, Lorraine was polishing her pearls and her grievances. But here, in apartment 4B, Rachel Morrison was having her cake and eating it too. And it tasted like victory, like freedom, like the best birthday gift she'd ever given herself. The gift of walking away, then walking forward, then finally, simply walking tall. The celebration I deserved hadn't come from anyone else. It had come from me, wrapped in legal papers and job offers and the laughter of chosen family. It had come from learning that sometimes the best parties are the ones you throw for yourself. And this one was just getting started.